Hello and welcome. So for the people who don't know me, like Jess said, my name is Gerard Amsellem, and I do program all over on any kind of art film, classic film, foreign films. And this is really the way how this program here is to reinforce good film and make you think about it and reflect and be able to have a Q&A after. So what I'm going to start, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of painting very briefly and go to Basquiat, tell you a little bit about it. You're going to watch the film, and after we'll have a Q&A. So I'm going to cover everything that I can, every aspect of everything else. So the first is the history of paintings. This, we are in the 1980s in New York City. Basquiat is a part of a movement called neo-Expressionist. So of course, neo-Expressionist remind you abstract expressionist. Abstract expressionist was a movement of painter before, in the 1960s with Rauschenberg and de Kooning and Pollock. So all of these are the good thing to think about history a little bit, to think that the Surrealist painter in Europe started, and after World War II they came here. They influenced the abstract expressionists, who were a group of people, because there is not too many group of painters in the history, work together, and this abstract expressionist go slowly disappearing to have a new race of a new movement called neo-expressionist. In this neo-expressionist, the most important of the painter of the neo-expressionist movement are Jean-Michel Basquiat and Julian Schnabel. It's an extraordinary film for one fact, that Julian Schnabel lived in the 1980s with Jean-Michel Basquiat downtown in New York City. He's a part of the art scene. They are both of them very famous painters. They have been doing very well. And Julian Schnabel, in 1996, if for the people who don't know, Basquiat died at 27 years old, in 28. In 1996, he decided to make a film on Jean-Michel Basquiat. So he's a friend. Julian Schnabel is a painter. This is his first film, and he makes a film on Basquiat. What's so interesting, and he was saying, there is rarely painters who are filmmakers. You are a painter or you are a filmmaker. But to have a painter making a film about another painter who struggled with his life, he gives you a vision of the film which is really kind of extraordinary. And both of them are very famous. And today, Schnabel is more a filmmaker than the painter, because he has made many films after that. So this film gives you a very extraordinary sensitivity of how we see Basquiat, how he represents Basquiat. It's a film which is going to tell you about all his life and the New York City time of the downtown in Soho, for the people who remember Soho in 1980, because I remember. I was there, I came in the States in 1984, so I used to go in Soho in 1984, 1985. This was the artist's place. All the artists were there. And then you can see how they were living together. Warhol was on the top, and so it's going to give you a lot of a good vision of the art scene at the time. But to come back to Basquiat, what a story. I mean, this is like a story, it's hard to believe, So he's born in Brooklyn from an Asian father and a Puerto Rican mother, of course with a dreamer, liking to draw and do a lot of different things. At 8 years old, he has a major accident, major car accident. His mother was very supportive of his artistic feelings, and she brings him a book. It was a book on anatomy, or like a physical anatomy of people. And it's so fascinating that this will affect all of his paintings. After this, when he gets to 16, 17 years old, drop out of high school and go in Seoul, sleep on the street. I mean, he had absolutely nothing. He made postcards that he was selling, and he started to be a graffiti artist. So everything, I'm sure you remember the subway of the 1980s, and everything, all the walls covered by everything else. So he worked with another artist, and they really do this. And one day, he meets Andy Warhol, and Warhol is fascinated by his work, and suddenly everything changed. And in such a short period of time, he becomes one of the most successful artists in the world. So this is one of an artist who made about, people think it's a lot of work, but it's just 400 pieces or 450 pieces in his lifetime. And about 85, he sell kind of this painting. Everybody's crazy about this painting. This painting around that, it's not exactly the same one. He was a sculptor about a skull. He was sold for $110 million. So just to give you an idea that there is never painters in an amount of in time of 2 years become the international really like success. So he becomes really, really famous and obviously take a lot of drugs and died of overdose at 28 years old. So you have a life with short, very powerful, great painting, very different than everyone else. And Schnabel, who was there with them and was a good friend of his, like a lot of other people, he was in the crowd. Madonna was in the crowd too. Madonna bought a painting from Basquiat. So you had all these people that, you know, people like filmmaker and all kind of group, and he was too into music. He was a DJ. He loved jazz music. So we're talking a very interesting time for the world. And after this, I can tell you, since the 1980s, there was never really a movement so full of imagination and creativity. Durand Schnabel, who is really famous for his plate. So when you see this painting, it's a painting was made with plates, broken plates. He used to make plates, break them, and put them on the canvas. He is known, and he was really, really famous too. So these guys were like at the top of the art world at that time, and when the Schnabel takes the film and make it his own, he has in the actors, and you will see, David Bowie is Andy Warhol. You're going to see all these famous people. You have all these people that you're going to recognize, these actors who are very, Gary Oldman is inside, all these people who were on this circle. So he knows all these people, and he's doing some very, very extraordinary job of showing you the portrait of Basquiat in a way that nobody has ever seen before. And it's actually the only film he's made. There was like a documentary who was a Radiant Child who was made a few years ago. But so whenever you watch the film, you're going to see it's a very biographical, and Schnabel is in the film because he's telling you about the area of the time and the connection, but he is under a different name, like Alfred Milo, so he put his name under a different name, but he's still in the film. You're going to see all the galleries. You're going to see Mary Boone and all these very important dealers of the 80s, and how he goes through it and makes this extraordinary film. So when you watch the film, try to see whatever you want to talk about it. But when we finish the film and I do the Q&A, I will talk about how the difficulty of the film was it. What did he do that was unusual for a filmmaker? Because he did not have any experience. We're talking he had first film. It's the first film that he makes. So all these elements, we'll talk about it. We'll have a Q&A, and I will answer all the questions. If it's an artistic question, you can ask me, or like a filmmaking question. But one or the other, you're going to have a very good vision of who is or who was Jean-Michel Basquiat, and his play really extraordinary. So in every way, the actors were very different to find, but I will tell you a little bit more after the film, when you watch the film and you enjoy. Anyone watch this film before? Yeah, so if you watch, you're going to remember, this is like, I'm sure like a long time ago, it's going to refresh your memory. And if you never watch it, you're going to see this is one of the most extraordinary and iconic artists in the 20th century. Very little people like this, and he affects the whole world today. A lot of influence too. The thing I can tell you is very interesting too, because Basquiat has a style who can be copied. I was listening on a podcast, they say, even if he made 450 or 450 paintings, there is about 10,000 of them in the world. Because people copy and sell it. There is a very huge market like this. I don't know if you realize there is a copy of fake things, so there is a lot of fake Basquiat flying around, you know. So thank you for coming, and I hope you appreciate this film, but I will be there after and answer all the questions that you have to do for Jean-Michel Basquiat. Let's remember, it's not somebody easy to copy or to make it, and he does such an extraordinary job. He says he spent hours just imitating the walk. The walk of Basquiat, and I tell you, you can see the Radiant Child with a documentary on Jean-Michel Basquiat who show you the real footage. It's very, very close. There is interviews, there is anything you want. On YouTube, you can find anything about his real, who he was as a real person, and they did a very extraordinary job. And because he didn't want to put himself in the film, the man who played Albert Milo is Julian Schnabel. So Julian Schnabel at that time is more famous than Jean-Michel Basquiat. He is everywhere, very well established, and Basquiat looked at Schnabel like somebody who succeeded better than him. And of course, you know, obviously Julian Schnabel is from a good Jewish Brooklyn family. As you can see, the parents, it's his parents. Actually, the people in the movie, his parents are his real parents. You know, so there is a lot of things like in filmmaking that you had. One thing too is extraordinary. They could not get, and I don't know how crazy it is, they could not get the right to use the real painting of Basquiat. So they made them. I don't know if you realize, I don't know, it's like one of, and I realized like as a filmmaker, when you go to like a problem like this, what do you do? So they could have, I mean, if people had, but they didn't give them the right. So all the painting of Basquiat you see on the film are made or by Schnabel or by people who were like really good painter, but they do a reproduction who's so extraordinary. And on the top of this, how he paints. The idea of that how he paints and how he paints on the floor, like obviously like Jackson Pollock and a lot of the other, you know, of that time or just before. And if you look at footage, look at real footage, it's how actors are so extraordinary, you know. So he reproduced really a life and the sensitivity of Basquiat, because as I know, Jeffrey Wright was not a drug addict, and to play a drug addict is not an easy thing either. So you have this very, very powerful performance. Jeffrey Wright just did a film not long ago. It was American Fiction. Has anybody watched this? Yeah, I mean, that it was like done like, you know, not long ago. But since this film, he is really known and really stuck in this role because he has been doing such a great job. So you have all this element. He said too, like somebody was saying, he didn't have too much experience too as a filmmaker. So when a filmmaker does something, it's been given to him by them. So he get a lot of like help to create this vision, which is kind of surrealistic in one way, because for filmmaker to take the risk to put somebody on a surf at the middle of the film, showing like something more like abstract of how Basquiat was felt, this is a vision of an artist. It's not a vision of like a PBS great painter. That is what I want to say. This is an art form. And it's what I say all the time in film. Film is like is a creator, the painter, the director who does a film creates something in his own voice and his own vision. And the goal of a creator is always to be able to connect with the public in an emotional way, always, or an intellectual way, but he is there to connect. And I think you can see, I think Schnabel was really caring about Basquiat, because his vision is very, very, very sensitive and very beautiful about how he becomes like, you know, destroy himself. The relation of Basquiat to Warhol was very important too. Basquiat looked at Warhol like his grandfather, his father or his brother. You know, he was everything for him. Let's not forget we are in the 1980s. This is New York City, the capital of the world of painters. These are like the most important painter. Warhol is into all this time where he paints a lot of different things. He has thousands of groups, all the people who go play and doing everything. And he really, he liked Basquiat, but he was very jealous of Basquiat Warhol, is what people say, because Warhol was a very conceptual artist. What we call a conceptual artist, he was a concept. The concept of the pop art is an idea. It's not really a painter. Basquiat is really a painter because he paints from his guts. And I think Warhol had all the time this kind of liking it, but in the same time, being a little bit jealous of this really powerful expression. And Basquiat loved him, you know, he loved him. When Warhol died, he was his end, because he had nobody to grab on, you know. Benicio del Toro, who is Benny, is his good friend. Everything in the film is really showing that you can do a biography, you can tell you the story of someone, but still making a film. And it's what I think that it's really an art form, and he has been really a very great thing. So, I mean, this is another film that I mean, I don't know if we will be able to watch this or I will be able to present this. At the Eternity of the Gate, with Willem Dafoe as Vincent van Gogh. It was one of the most extraordinary film on painters, too. So you're talking about all kind of elements. You're talking about the storyline, you're talking about the biography, but you're talking, too, about the creativity of Julian Schnabel. So all the other actors, from Benicio del Toro to Dennis Hopper. Dennis Hopper at that time had already made a lot of films. So he was kind of, not saying like a brother for Schnabel, but he helped him during the film. Because Schnabel used to say, what am I doing? He said, okay, go ahead. He helped him. So he was helped by this group of people around him who was his friend, and helped him to to finish the film. You know, the music is feeling extraordinary inside, and the idea that Basquiat was so attached to his mother, it's all made with subtle. It's just very, very sensitive and very at the point. It's not excessive. Even so, it is an excessive life, and it's a powerful life, and it's an extreme life because he died from overdose, but he was such a lost case, and the world was lost for him. He was lost into a lot of statement about society, you know, racial statement. Oh my God, I mean, was the time, the 1980s. I don't know, I came here in 1982, but I know that the early 80s, there was a lot of scandal of people killed, and there was a lot of movement in the bottom of New York City. New York City was really really rough at the time, very rough. And the graffiti idea, and the rebellion idea, and to the mythology, the crown, this idea that he is a prince, that nothing is gonna happen to him, and how much he was loved, you know. So you have all these elements to make this film kind of exceptional. He produced what he said too, you know, when Schnabel told him, he said, you know, you are before your time, and he was before his time. Because Basquiat is now seen and, you know, appreciated by a very younger generation. I can tell you, you know, it's like he has this scream and this cry and this way of paint which is so special. Whenever I show a film, I say something, the great creator are one type of people and not another one could be the same. If you go and you see a Picasso in a museum, you know it's a Picasso. If you go in Van Gogh, you know that it's a Van Gogh. If you see a Basquiat, you know it's a Basquiat. This is what we call great talent. And not just great talent. They are the only one who will ever do that. Otherwise, people will say, I can do this too. But you never did it. Mark Rothko, I don't know if you know Mark Rothko. Mark Rothko paints this really humongous thing. He spent all his life to get to this point. And people say, I can do this. I say, well, can't do this. You spend your life before to get there. So these people are visionaries, they are creators, and they change the world of art. And on the top of this, having a filmmaker who is an artist himself doing this is a double whammy. So you get like two things. You get like the vision of Schnabel being a great director and a great artist himself, and on the top, looking at Basquiat, who had this really dramatic life, but will produce such an extraordinary things. I think the role, too, of all these people around him could be Benicio del Toro, or all these are very, very accurate. So he really reproduced these people, like, because he lived the time, so he knew what these people was. Very, very accurate in the way he reproduced everything, and he gave a great product. Great product, especially in the music, when you have like images, and you have music, and you have painting, and you have everything that's very powerful, you know, very powerful. So that is really what a film is made, what a statement in film. You have the filming, you have the acting, you know, all the actors were, again, like very young and starting their life and brought some really, really unbelievable way of expressing who he is, and it's the only film who was ever made on Basquiat. There is no other film, besides some documentary, but nothing else. He had this too, you know, like the idea of like people were considering he was really kind of rebellious in a lot of ways. And he said what he did not like. And I mean, he said that, he said, I am not a black artist, I am an artist. And that statement who are still there, you know. So he considered himself like a creator And he's still seen today as this great person who just popped out of the 80s and who you know, and I know the art world well enough. There's not too many people like this in the history of the world, you know. So you have people like this who pop up, who come out. When you see him as a little boy going with his mother, go see the Guernica of Picasso, you see all these things are like making and had a big impact. His mother had an unbelievable impact. He, of course, didn't like his father. His father was an accountant. Accountant and painter, they don't go together. And he had like a lot of fights with his father. The thing I can tell you, when they're trying to do the collaboration with Warhol, it didn't work. Because they wanted to do something together. Yeah, the 80s were like a very interesting era. I mean, I'm not so old, but I remember them very well. I can tell you, I remember this Reagan era, you know, when Ronald Reagan came in, you know, the world changed. The world changed in the way of like, oh, there was this rebellious thing, and it's not for nothing that these people are coming in the 80s. Because it was, I mean, I remember this really kind of like conservative kind of things, you know, like when he I mean, I remember very well because at that time I was in the airline business, a long time ago. And when he fired, I don't know if you remember that, Reagan fired everyone, you know, and everybody was saying, what's going on? It was like really a strong push on like the me generation, the 80s. So that if this comes, at that time, it is still, it shows. It shows that we are in a generation who needed something rebellion. And often art is the most powerful rebellion act against something that people don't want. In general, it's young people, but too for old people. And that's a very specific thing. This really scream of a great painter, you know. So, yeah.
Do you think that the drugs were a way that he comforted himself?
I can't hear you. So.
Do you think the drugs were the way that he comforted himself?
Yeah.
And that eventually, taking the drugs, he may have felt that this enhanced his art.
Okay, I'm going to tell you one thing.
The scenes where he was imagining certain things.
Yeah. No, you're right. I'm going to tell you something very interesting. This is a sentence of André Breton, who was the head of the Surrealist movement. He used to say, "The dream of a butcher are not the same dream than a poet." And think about it. If you take drugs, and if you have, I mean, people used to say, if I'm taking drugs, I'm going to play saxophone like John Coltrane. No, you're not going to play saxophone like John Coltrane. It's if you don't have the ability inside. Drugs might do, you know, just ease you, but maybe in the creativity. But if you don't have the creativity in you, you're not going to go anywhere. You're going to finish on the street. But all these people, I mean, all these great artists who took drugs, it helped their creativity because they had it inside.
Well, it goes back to his image of that child caught
Yeah,
in...
the crown with like...
And he never got out.
Yeah.
I mean,
No, he never got out.
He
Yeah.
always felt trapped.
Yeah, he felt really trapped. But I think it's interesting because there was this image, like I remember, like people saying, "Oh, if I take drugs, I'm going to be more creative." You can have more vision, but what kind of vision? You know, you can sit down and try. You know, if you don't have this creativity as a writer or as anything, nothing is going to come out. Nothing is going to come out. So these are like, you know, they are the stronger. You know, this idea how he's lost into this childhood, you know, he never come out. But he had something, I mean, the way how he painted, no one can do that. No one did that. So it's kind of a very specific thing, and it's why they changed. There was such an impact of the world. As a difference with Vincent van Gogh, because people say, Van Gogh, it took forever for him to be famous, forever. You know, and he didn't come, I mean, people say all the time, how did he become famous? When Van Gogh lost his brother Theo, you know, Theo died a few months after Van Gogh, you know, with Vincent. Theo was really the closest person in his life. And when Theo died, his wife, she took everything from Vincent and she went around everywhere to make him famous. And it's very funny because nobody